So welcome everybody, my name is Paul and I talk a lot about consciousness and perception in my site here. And today I'm going to expand more on the science of the soul as I've talked about in some of the previous videos. The old ancient science of the soul is called by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita the knowledge of all knowledges, the ultimate science, the supreme science, and it's very easy to practice and so on. And a lot of people who hear about meditation these days don't quite grasp the fact that the word yoga actually refers to a very profound experience of being union. And union and oneness is a theme that goes throughout. This is the nature of creation, as I've discussed, and the ancient sages have told us that this creation is a oneness, and as above, so below, and we are like a fractal or a microcosm of the ultimate divine, whatever you call it, infinity, and that infinite beingness, life force, whatever you call it, slowly exudes itself out into the creation through a mystical process of, it's a scientific process, all the different ratios and geometry that happens and frequencies and light that basically, we are being created 24/7 like a 3D printer. I mean, every day we go through our life and light hits us and sound and everything. And this magical body that we have just keeps going on and on. And understanding our existence and that our, quote, self, our beingness, is the ancient science, is the oldest science. And in fact, it is an understanding of our own awareness that's led to all the great scientific developments and all the great religious experiences and all the great inspiration and art and music. It all comes from that connection that we have to the oneness from within through our inspiration, through our intuition, through the great glandular functions of the body, the beautiful body that we have here. It allows us to have a link to immerse ourselves in that oneness and feel that union on some level where there's no longer a sense of separation from that infinity. And so the process of the supreme knowledge, the supreme teaching, is to have a practical experience. It's a direct practical experience, and it's not about just a philosophy of theory. Now, we have various books and so on, the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and many others that talk about the theory, the principles, the wisdom, the concept of the oneness, and that we are part of and participants of it, and that there is a gateway through our own awareness, through practical techniques, that we can experience that union and feel the joy and feel that we're not separated anymore from the cosmos, you might say, and from our God. Now, the subject of God is a vast one or it's a simple one. You could just say, well, it's everything, or you can debate it. But basically, the concept of oneness is an experiential reality, and that's what the supreme knowledge is. It's a teaching that gives you the theory and understanding of this life and the beautiful body that we have, and then it allows you to have an experience when you're ready. It's kind of like if you want to eat a dish, if you want to eat food, you clean the dish first. So essentially, before we understand and get a real taste of that divine, you might say, or that beautiful soul, or that link to the cosmos, that inner link to the quantum field, whatever you call it, that is a practical thing that a real teacher, a guru, I'm not a teacher, I'm a student, but they give you that experience through their own radiation, through their own wisdom, through the mechanics of their own being, expressing tremendous beauty and joy. There are teachers who've come onto this planet many, many times who can give us that experience if we don't have it automatically. When we were children, we have so many beautiful experiences. Everything is a joy until we start fighting about toys or something. But basically, we have an inherited gift of being a human being that is the joy. Joy is the inheritance of being a human being. Joy and awareness and liberation and freedom. And that has an internal link. We can't chase outdoors for something that we're going to find inside, you see? And that's what the great masters and teachers have always taught us. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the practical aspects of it, because that knowledge and experience that we can bring when we harness our own being through, first of all, understanding that this system that we're in, we often talk about I this, I that, I'm doing this and that. But when we get down to it and ask ourselves, well, what is that I? Is it just this body? My body's doing something, but while my body's doing something, my mind can be doing something completely different. I have an emotional aspect. My emotions interfere with my mind and my body. And, there's a whole bunch of different components of our being, and they're all one collective beingness, just like this universe is full of planets and galaxies, but it's collectively one being. And essentially, the liberation and the joy of a human being is to find that practical experience so that we have an actual day-to-day growth experience that we expand throughout our life and increase our perception and the subtlety, and that's where the reality of that divine being within us, and the quantum field is the field of everything, and that mystery that we can have a practical experience of, that beginning experience of having an immersion, or a guru teaches some techniques, or we have some kind of a profound liberating experience, that's the beginning of a daily transformation that, according to the scriptures, even all the greatest beings, they went through this whole process. Every being eventually goes through the process of finding back their link to that, merging back to that union with that divine source. And when we harness our components through integration, through aligning, basically meditation and proper foods and habits and so on, brings us into a nice rhythm and alignment. And that alignment, just like a candle flame, if you just leave it there for a while, it'll just slowly, if it's not disturbed, it'll have this beautiful flame and a beautiful shape, and has different colors in it depending on what's burning and so on. But our being the divine wants to express, you might say, everything in creation is trying to move everything along toward a beautiful, beautiful unfoldment and transformation and harmony. And in our life, we can get linked up with that flow and get into that synchronization. But part of it is like the understanding of what's going on in our life. Because let's say you're in a river and you're floating down the river, but in your mind you're trying to imagine yourself running along the shoreline or going off into the woods or something, but life is taking you down this river, and you can get out of the boat, I suppose, but park your boat for a while and go run in the woods. But essentially every river eventually goes down to the ocean, and our life is progressing and unfolding, and sooner or later we're going to get into that river. Basically, we're going to leave this body, and all our elementals and gases and fluids and everything will distribute back to where they belong. And the same thing is the component of our awareness that the guru and the great liberation, the teachers bring us into an actual experience, so that when we finally leave in this world, when we finally go, we've already had a long, long familiarity with that feeling of, not this body. There's more to my being. It's what we're attached to that it confuses us. It's fine to do everything in this world. There are many different techniques people do. They get very, very austere, and they do strange things for their body and so on to try to prevent themselves from being focused or losing their focus from within. But it's not necessary. There's plenty of challenges in our modern life to deal with people and so on in politics that's a pretty big challenge. You don't need to go live in a cave somewhere. That's a little bit too much. So integrating our own being, aligning, is all what yoga is all about. And it's essentially all genius and inspiration comes from that place. And the more we experience it in our daily life, the more clarity that we have. Now, there's a long discussion in esoteric circles about, what kinds of cosmic experiences you have, and samadhi, and all these kinds of things, and telepathy, and this and that and the other thing. Now, I have a long experience. I've been practicing meditation since 1973, and I've met some really, really beautiful people, and I try to practice. Not a real great discipline at times in my life, but generally speaking, I had a long history of feeling and experiencing some very, very deep and profound, subtle things. And my basically condition, my conclusion is just let go, let yourself be, let the various aspects of your being harmonize and integrate and align, and sit still sometimes. Because just like a candle that wants to have a beautiful, perfect flame and a shape. But if the wind is coming and everything, it's just going to be all mixed up and everything, and it might even go out. The thing is that we need to practice some stillness in our life on a regular basis, because the stillness that we practice with our awareness, it starts to still down our whole body. A lot of people don't know what it feels like to have their whole body completely still, and their mind not thinking about anything, and then you're having the same experience of rest that your body would have in deep sleep, but you're wide conscious. And what are you conscious of? Well, there's a lot to be conscious of. Each one has their own experience, but there's a subtlety in within that we can tap into that brings us into that dimension that the sages call the rain cloud of knowable things. I love that phrase. It's like the mist of knowledge, the mist of understanding. The quantum universe that we talk about and scientists just barely start getting into, in that field is everything. It's all the potential of everything. And we're just here for a really short time. We're never really going to quite figure out what the whole quantum field is all about. It is the subplane of information and geometry and movement and everything that is from which everything springs up, and atoms even spring up from that, and then they go back in there. So we have to understand the basic principles of this cosmic science, and then we need to integrate that into our perception, so that while we live this life in our physical dimension, we're doing all the things that it can be extremely coordinated and attuned to the inner dimension, so that the inner, all our emotions and our mentals is moving along in one flow, just like that river. It's like we're going down the river. If you're paying attention to the river, it's gonna be a beautiful journey. If you're looking at the shore, not so much. You'll probably crash into a rock or something. So basically, meditation and yoga, this ancient science, involves a certain amount of discipline and practice, but there's rewards and there's real experience. There's provable things. There's an ancient saying about science. Well, if it's repeatable, well, the ancient science of knowledge of the soul has been provable and experienceable for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's the ultimate science. And any science today, you can go all the way in physics and you'll come to the same conclusion. That what are you dealing with? You're dealing with essential something that we don't even know what it really is. The quantum vibrations and mystical substances that we'll never get to know and see. Big, huge galaxies that are whirling around. And the thing that opens those understandings for scientific discovery is a connection with the divine, a connection with the interior. Call it whatever you want. People don't like that word divine, whatever. Call it. Even atheists can understand that there's something that we can't define, that is way, way beyond our comprehension, and that we are just little sparks and fireflies on this world for a few minutes and then we're gone. So how are we going to argue about the cosmos? The debate about whether God exists or not it can't be an intellectual debate, and if it is an experiential reality, then it's not a debate at all. Now, there's a lot of different things that I could talk about in terms of integrating, and I have my own private experiences. The way that things are manifested, there's a certain techniques. There's a book I read called the Treatise on White Magic. Basically, All magic is just basically a science of precipitating things out from the quantum field through the various, we might be involved physically, mentally, emotionally with that process, but everything precipitates out. Just like there's a certain technique in the science of making computer chips where they deposit like this incredibly thin film of silicon or gold or whatever onto a surface. It's just almost like imperceptibly small. That's where these chips are made of these things, and that's where we have a technology. We have electricity, we have sound in our body, we have organic chemistry going on. We have a practical antenna, a broadcasting station. This being that we have is just absolutely awesome, and that's what the science of yoga is all about, because it starts with a very, very simple practice. First, you got to understand that we're not this body, and that we can go and have an experience within. And that experience liberates us because we start knowing that we're way more than this body. Blind people can have incredible musical talent. There's all kinds of genius and intelligence in every single person, no matter what their shape, size, or condition. There's still a tremendous amount of potential that we're not fathoming. And the first step is just to take that step inside and realize in a practical way that we're not this body, and that's where a guru comes in. I'm not a guru. I have a guru, a teacher. His name is Prem Rawat, and if you'd like to know the techniques that I practice, then go listen to him, because he's a profound teacher and has many, many decades of experience. But I'm a student of that experience, and I'm here to tell people, look, there's a lot more to this life than you can possibly imagine. Just in your day-to-day life. You don't have to wait for going and sitting some cave somewhere, or every single day you can face this life with understanding that there's tremendous, tremendous potential in every single person. And that's because we have that ultimate science, that link that connects our awareness through our concentration, through our openness, through our prayers, through our effort. We can connect with something on a very, very subtle level. And once you do that, then your whole life starts to unfold in a very, very beautiful way. And in the terms of things like so-called powers, I mean, frankly, I've had experience in my life, like many people had, where you can pretty much know what people are thinking. And the more I practice, the more settled. If I get up from meditation, there's none of my own thoughts there. There's just like, then in that type of a state, everything becomes transparent, because you're not reacting to anything. You're just seeing what's there, and people and objects become more and more transparent, you might say. But a lot of it has to do with simplicity. Frankly, I don't even want to know what people are thinking. I mean, honestly, I got enough trouble with my own thoughts. And a lot of them I don't want to know. So there's a lot of things in this world that you really don't want to get into. You want to go out of your body, and then you might go to some place that you don't like, and there's bad things and good things that can happen in the inner world if you go into the wrong places. But typically, what I'm talking about, the technique that I'm talking about, is going to a place where it's kind of like you turn on a light, and then there's no darkness anymore. It can be a very small light, but it's just enough, and the light gets brighter and brighter and brighter. It's kind of like if you're in a dark room and you can't see anything, and you just turn on a little tiny light, and then slowly the light gets better. Then now you can navigate the whole room and find every little detail in it. And in the same way with our inner perceptions, that as we grow and we become more conscious, and our pineal gland gets more and more awake, and we have more subtle experiences, then there's a whole lot of other things that open up to your life. Ways of learning, and the way it affects relationships, how being in harmony with your own being is just a really beautiful way to live. It's good in business, it's good in families. So working on our own being starts with that very simple process. And I want to talk more about the real, more cosmic and aspects of this knowledge, you might say, but there's lots and lots of books about it. There's lots and lots of people out there talking about their various experiences. And I just suggest that no matter who's listening to this, that they just take a little more effort and explore in detail and get some more information about various aspects of the so-called knowledge of all knowledge, because it really is a knowledge. And the word for it in India, I guess the Sanskrit is Jnana. It's called the knowledge of yoga, the knowledge of union, you might say. There's an intellectual aspect of it, of understanding the concepts, the principles of oneness, and how the body is constructed and the field that we have. And then there's the practical experience, so that a lot of people get into practical experience and they may have a very profound meditative experience, but they don't really understand the broader context of how that inner experience is related to invention and dreams and genius and telepathy and relationships. That little experience that you have of union can be broadened and broadened and broadened until we have these great teachers that appear on the earth, and they just have like a profound, they're just basically an embodiment of a certain energy that is just, it just contains everything, you might say, and all the joy and bliss, because that's a lot of practice. People have done that for thousands of years. There's been souls that have been practicing these techniques for thousands of years. They come back in another body and they practice again and they do it again and again. And apparently, obviously there's some great, great, great souls that have appeared on this planet many, many times. And there's many of them right now on the planet. And you can learn from them. So I hope everybody enjoys this discussion. I appreciate feedback. Who am I? I'm not a licensed anybody in terms of psychotherapist. I'm a student of this knowledge, and I have practiced meditation since my early years. And I also studied a lot of the scriptures and the different aspects of it, and practice some of the techniques that are listed in some of these books like the Yoga Sutras, and to try to understand what is the nature of this vehicle that we have. And frankly, there's a lot of things I know but don't put into practice, because there's something like I know a lot of other things in the real world, I might say, that I don't practice either. But I know about them, and I don't know how to build a house. I don't build houses, but I know how they're built. So there's a lot of things that I've experienced and had some basic experience with in terms of some of the profound experience of meditation. And then there's aspects of the practice that I do that is continuous and relaxing and more frequent. So one of the things that I really like is the place where I go, just a place where it's complete stillness, and a kind of silence that's not just the silence of the physical silence, but the silence of the thoughts, where everything just drops. And it's a very, very simple place to go to. It's so easy, really. It's more of a mental challenge, because it's sort of like letting go. You can, if you're holding on to something, and then all you have to do is let go. So we let go of our perception of ourselves temporarily, and then we allow ourselves to imbibe, you might say, and bring in more of the deeper aspects of our being, and integrate them into that beautiful flame that we all are as human beings. So I appreciate people watching, and again, thanks for listening, and please like and share if you find anything in this content interesting. So I hope I see you in some of the other videos.